Good morning and welcome to Mayor's Weekly. We're pleased to be with you this morning, and joining me is our city planner, new to his job by just a few months, Brent McCarver. And what we want to talk about this morning is retail and commercial development and some of the good trends that we're seeing in this city. And Brent, before we talk about those things, I'd like to do just a little bit of foundational work, and that is you really have three things out there. You have retail, you have commercial, and you have industrial.
Right.
Now, of course, we all know what retail is: fast food, clothing. What falls into the commercial category? If you're out on Highway 78, I'll always know it's Highway 78 rather than 118.
Right.
But there close by where Popeye's Chicken, there's a new dental facility that's
Right.
going in. That falls into the commercial category. If UAB said we'd like to come to Jasper and put a laboratory in,
Right.
that would, if you're out by the Department of Human Resources, the United States Department of Agriculture is having a building, that falls into the commercial area. Then you move into the industrial category, and that's a whole different ball game. Now, and I'm not being critical of this writer because it's very reasonable to think in this direction. When we announced Rural King on our Facebook, somebody sent out the contact for the Industrial Development Board, and I can see that, but
Right.
the Industrial Development Board has nothing to do with retail and commercial.
Right.
And that Jasper has an Industrial Development Board, but that Industrial Development Board is just like Jasper City School System. It's just like Jasper Water Works. The council appoints their board members, but they don't run the show. So if you had an inquiry or a question about industrial development, that's where those questions could go. It'd be a better source of information for you. But so we come back to retail and commercial, and how do those leads develop? And there's a myriad of sources that we'll talk about in our most recent, that being Rural King. That lead originated with the Chamber of Commerce through a consulting group that they have hired. But there are many other contacts and ways to contact the city when you're dealing with retail and commercial, and more times than not, those contacts end up in Brent's office. They originate with the city planner. Brent, I know we've talked that we get calls on a regular basis, almost daily, from consulting groups that don't identify their client, but they've done some research on Jasper, and Jasper measures up in ways. They're looking for additional information. And then if there is really a sincere interest in coming to Jasper, then we get down to what we call the brass tacks of the deal. What sort of incentives do we have? Do they have special needs for highway access? Right. All sorts of things. But and Brent, what we're going to talk about is, and you expand on what I've just talked about if you like. But we are seeing a groundswell of interest in Jasper, and you might talk a little bit about how your phone is ringing, and then we'll talk about some things that we know, but we won't identify projects. But
Right.
Touch on that, Brent.
Well, first of all, one of the things that I learned right off, Jasper and most municipalities, but Jasper has three zoning districts. You have the R, the B, and the M in different levels there: residential, business, and manufacturing. And so in your 20-year plan that the city has, I guess they probably did that in 2015, I think, is when it was done. But, you know, your long-range plan for future land use is based around those zoning districts. So first of all, you've got land, you might say mythically allocated for such development. And then when you talk about industrial, when you talk about retail, and when you talk about commercial, commercial is your office space, as you said, your service industries, but also in commercial, your multifamily, your apartment dwellings, those type things where you're generating income from your residential area.
Yeah.
Those fall under commercial as well. So one of the things we get a lot of, I guess disproportionately, are real estate companies and land development companies calling, and I would say that is daily, at least one a day. They'll call with questions about zoning, with questions about the school system, with questions about building permit access, and you know, as we're talking to them, I try to figure out what are you looking at doing, what are your thoughts, what are your plans. A predominant number right now are, and this is good because it is something we need in every survey that's done right now, but a predominant number of those right now are residential multifamily developments. What we talk about multi-use developments where you've got large 50, 60 acre tracts. Some of it's single family, some of it's retail, some of it is multifamily. The kind of things when you go to places, you know, we bring it up all the time, but like Huntsville or the Shoals or over in Hoover, Homewood area, those type of developments where you know, you can get into the development and then there's multiple uses right in there together. We're getting, and I can't talk obviously before I got the job, but the number of those calls, I just had a meeting yesterday with a very reputable real estate company out of Birmingham. They're looking at a piece of property and their idea is to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 total units. Now that's a mix of single family houses, some multi-use, multi-family, and then some office space retail, light retail. So that is happening every day.
You know, you look at that and you think about 300 units, the magnitude of that investment is huge. And what I know from my previous life, folks that can bring that sort of thing to the table or to fruition, whatever you want to call it, they've done their due diligence. They feel like this is a market that would sustain and allow them to be successful, and very encouraging.
Very, very much so. One of the things too that just made me think about, I'm learning, we treat everybody equal. If you're ABC Realty out of New York, or if you're, you know, Joe Smith lives in Jasper and you come to me with an idea and get started, we all start the same.
Yeah.
And you know, so, but there is sort of a, I'm learning, there is kind of a vetting process for us over there. You know, we're everybody's short-staffed in the world today, so we don't have a lot of time. You know, we're going to get to a point and figure out what's the legitimate deal here, what's real. You know, a lot of these folks, a thing you're welcome to do is call the office if this were to pique your interest. A lot of these folks have everything in the world except the land or the investment dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking for partners in either way. You know, I get a lot of calls. Here's what I've got the money, I've got the startup, I've got the plan. Do you know where there's 30 acres or 12 acres? You know, you're welcome to call us over here at the annex and tell us that. But that's another big thing that goes right now.
But Brent, you get you and I talk, and you get an awful lot of calls, like I said, where the consultant does not identify their client, and that's okay. And then we see things, and we've talked about that. You see some things pop up here that we really didn't have a lead on, and you can only suspect that one of these consultants is called and didn't identify their client, and hopefully the information we've helped satisfy them to the point that they want to be here. And when you look up and down our retail corridor, the vacancy rate is almost zero, isn't it?
It is, and again, the good thing that we keep telling everyone, we have dirt. A lot of the places around us, you get into Birmingham Metro, Hoover, Homewood, again, if you leave here and go up to the Huntsville, Athens, Decatur area, over to the Shoals, they're running out of land.
Right.
We have land. We have land for infill. We have large tracts, and that really helps us. Tuscaloosa is beginning to get constricted on land. One of the things to talk about what you just said, we have one major that I know is solid. The second one is major as well. It's brand new. Retail developments would be in and around the interstate area. You hate to say this, can't talk about what they are or who they are, but the interesting thing, they seem to have popped up kind of out of nowhere. One of these, I'm about 2 weeks into working with, 3 weeks into working with them, and a name has popped up that I went back and I talked to in December. Now, in December, I had no idea what this was about. The guy was just asking about property and asking about zoning and all this stuff. Well, he's now called me back, and he's involved with the development that looks like it's going to come to fruition at the interstate.
And it's so important to bring as much clarity as you can to what you're saying, and not taking anything away from what Brent said. We don't know these folks are coming. Here's what we do know. We know that we have strong reason to believe that these two developments will come
Exactly.
to Jasper, Alabama, even to the point that Brent has been working with one of them, one of the companies advertising side for their signage and making it fit our sign ordinance and signage on the interstate, that sort of thing. So I said, we don't know they're coming, but we have strong reason to believe that that they're coming. And so many of these contacts, like I said, end up in come in the door at the city planning office, and those folks there, Brent does a good job for us, and those folks know my expectations of we're going to be proactive. We're going to do everything we can to help you come to Jasper. And I've said this, and I keep saying it, and because it seems from time to time that people don't seem to get their hands around this. But we have a $34 million budget. Some 60% of that comes from sales tax revenue. And if we grow sales tax revenue, then that allows us to do other things in our city. Unfortunately, we don't have to dig out of a hole, but we can better support our essential services in the city. We can do things that contribute to elevating quality of life in our city. And then, Brent, we talk about this too. There's an old axiom out there that says, success breeds success.
Right.
And I think we're certainly benefiting from that as more people come to town. I shared with you a few weeks ago what I know, again from my previous life. The wellhead for developers in this part of Alabama is Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing, the consultants, the prospects are coming out of the Georgia area. Is that right?
Yeah. The phone rings, and you can look over at it, or they transfer a call to me. We see a lot of the immediate Atlanta, Marietta, going into North Georgia area codes on the front of those numbers. And again, I'll say this, that a lot of these calls, they're good, because if I don't ask them, they won't even tell me who they are.
Yeah.
That's how confidential this stuff is. And I know it gets to be, my own family. They'll say, well, what? And I say, I can't say anything about it right now.
Yeah.
But, it is. That's legitimately for their marketing purposes and all this. They do a lot of work before anybody ever has any idea. I think Rural King was about a 6 or 7 year project, I believe, wasn't it? So,
and let me tell, there's a good story I want to tell about that. I still think about that person that wrote, why can't we ever get anything good?
Yeah.
2 days after we made that announcement, and I don't think you know this, man, we get a call from a city manager in Pennsylvania that says, what did you folks do to get Rural King? we've been trying for 5 or 6 years, and they'd put up meaningful money to try to land Earl King, and said, we have not gotten much more than a look. So they said, we have been watching the live streaming of your city council meetings, and of course the underlying question was, what kind of money did Jasper put in the deal to make it work? And we didn't disclose that, but that's just how big that project is going to be. And another thing I want to touch on is the Ruby Tuesdays facility up on the retail corridor has been vacant for some time. There's a sign gone up, Roma's Italian Restaurant, so I'm not disclosing something. And that is one of those projects, to our knowledge, that if it was a call, it was somewhat of an anonymous call to learn about the city. That prospect did not originate with the city, the chamber, anybody else. I don't know how it came together. I've done some internet research. What I can find gives those folks a good report card. But you know, another good ad. But you know, none of us can claim that we cultivated that prospect.
No.
That they whoever the ownership is, and they're based in Duluth, Georgia, and whoever the decision maker, they sized Jasper up on their own and made the decision to come to town.
As far as we know, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. And you know, too, like you and I have discussed, and you've said so many times, that the understanding for the public also needs to be, we encourage all development, but we don't do any of the development. We facilitate it.
Yeah.
We're not taking somebody's piece of property and marketing it. That's not the job of the city. But you do have entities here, from the chamber to the IDB to Main Street to individual realtors that are doing that. But I think sometimes people get confused. You know, they'll say, well, why don't y'all go get this? Well, we're here to facilitate that. We're getting the phone calls. We're doing everything we can, but we're not actively recruiting and developing private property.
Why don't y'all go get it?
Right.
It's not like picking groceries
That's
off
right.
the shelf, is it?
That's right.
You know, it takes money, and those people have to have a desire to be in your market.
Right.
And if they don't have a desire to be in your market, I don't care if you have a dump truck load of warm and fuzzies. It's not going to work.
Exactly right.
Not
Exactly
gonna work.
right.
But if you have questions about retail or commercial development, we stand ready to answer those. And like I said, if you have an interest or inquiries about industrial development, that would be something for the Industrial Development Board to answer for. That'd be a better source of information. Pleased to have you with us today, and we'll look forward to being with you next week.